Hi, in this lesson we'll talk about curriculum evaluation. We're going to be looking at its purposes, the approaches, the foci, and the procedures for conducting a curriculum evaluation. First of all, let's define evaluation. Richards and Schmidt defined evaluation as the systematic gathering and analysis of all relevant information for the purposes of decision making. It is important to mention that evaluation can be made on a whole program, that is, the curriculum, the syllabus, the objectives, materials, the testing procedures, and so on, or also on the different groups of individuals that participate in the program. For example, administrators, teachers, students, and so on. The information collected can be quantitative or qualitative. Now, why is it important to conduct an evaluation? First of all, because we will obtain the answer to different questions that are very common. First of all, how can we determine the quality of a program? How do we know if a program is a quality program or not? How can we know if the quality of the program rises or declines? A second question is, how can we know if the outcomes of the program are being achieved, and then to what extent? Another very important question for which we need answer is, how do we know what aspects or components of the program need to be improved, and how? A related question is, what is the best approach or procedure to conduct a curriculum evaluation? And last but not least, there is the question of how often a program should be evaluated. So today's lesson will provide answers to these and other related questions. First of all, let's look at the dimensions of curriculum evaluation. First of all, an evaluation can have a very specific purpose. It can also focus on a particular curriculum element. It includes different sets or groups of participants. It can use one or different approaches and can employ a number of different qualitative or quantitative instruments. So the purpose answers the question, why are we going to evaluate? What kind of decisions do we want to make? The second dimension refers to what curriculum elements we are going to focus on. Are we going to focus on the syllabus? Are we going to focus on the materials, the teaching methodology, and so on? We can also ask questions about who will be involved in the curriculum evaluation and how. That means as participants, as providers of information, as analysts of the information, and so on. Then the approaches will answer the question of how the evaluation will be conducted. What kind of data are we going to use? And finally, of course, within each approach, we will use a different number of instruments, which are the specific procedures that we're going to use to elicit the information that will be used for the curriculum evaluation. So when we talk about curriculum evaluation, we're going to make decisions about each of these dimensions. Let's look at the first dimension. First thing that we need to ask is, why are we going to conduct an evaluation? The purpose could be the revision and improvement of the current program. Another purpose will be the revision and the design of a whole new program, because maybe we think that the programs need to be updated, that it needs to become more relevant. Another purpose of the evaluation could be simply monitoring that the program is going well, that everything is working just fine. And finally, there could be accreditation purposes. That is, sometimes we want an external organism to accredit the quality of our programs, and for this reason, we will carry out also curriculum evaluation. Now, let's look at the focus. We can focus on a given evaluation on one or different curriculum components. We can focus on the purpose, the goals, or the objectives, or maybe we want to revise the syllabus of the different courses that are being offered in the program. Maybe we want to focus on the methodology and the teaching, the way that it's being carried out by the teachers. We'll probably want to take a look at the materials and the resources that are being used for teaching. Sometimes the focus can be on the assessment and testing and see how the outcomes, the objectives of the program are being attained. And finally, we can focus on the facilities or the equipment or the program, which also play a very important role in curriculum implementation. Once that we have decided the purpose and the focus of our evaluation, we might want to consider what participants will be involved. Different groups of people may include the students and the teachers, and sometimes curriculum developers who are going to be experts in, who will guide us in the process. There could be the administrators also, which will provide important information and will help to organize the logistic of the curriculum evaluation. In some cases, especially when the programs are financed by different organisms or in private institutions, there could be a participation of the stakeholders or the sponsors of the program. And finally, there could also be external evaluators. This is the case in which their program is being evaluated for accreditation purposes. The next stage in planning the evaluation will be to decide on an approach or a variety of approaches to be used for the evaluation. We could carry out a product-focused or a process-focused evaluation. We could probably carry out summative or formative evaluation. We may use qualitative or quantitative information. Or maybe we can decide between descriptive or reflective evaluation. It is very important to mention here that even though those are dichotomies or dimensions, all of them are compatible. This means that we can carry out both a product and a process-focused evaluation, and that we can collect qualitative or quantitative information, for example. They're not exclusive. We can select depending on the purposes of the evaluation. Now, depending on the approach selected, we will be using different kinds of instruments. Some of them could be tests, for example, if we're using qualitative information in an outcome-based approach. We may use piloting approaches sometimes if we're focusing on the process, and if we want to develop a reflective evaluation. We may use interviews or questionnaires, which may include both qualitative or quantitative information. We could carry out recordings or observations of the different teaching processes. We may carry data obtained from diaries and journals, which of course will be qualitative and very reflective. Or maybe we can use all kinds of written records if we are focusing on a product-based evaluation. So the selection of the instrument will depend on the kind of approach that we are using. Now let's review very quickly each of the approaches so that we can be sure that we know what they are all about. First of all, in a product-oriented approach, the focus is on the goals and the objectives of the program, because we want to determine if these outcomes have been achieved or not. In this way, the evaluation is directed at measuring precisely the attainment of the goals and then deciding to make improvements concerning the objectives that were stated beforehand. Conversely, on a process-oriented approach, we will be based on the notion that the procedures of the evaluation can be used to facilitate curriculum change and improvement. That means that in this case, we advocate the experiential basis of learning. So we focus not only on the product, but also on the process of learning and teaching. Concerning the distinction between formative And summative evaluation, we can say that the former is implemented during the development of a program and its curriculum. That is, while the program is in process. And in this case, of course, the purpose of the evaluation is program improvement. We're going to make minor but very, very numerous decisions. So this is the kind of evaluation that we use when the purpose of the evaluation is monitoring the program. On the other hand, summative evaluation is usually conducted at the end when the program has been completed. That means when all of the students have gone from level 1 to the final level of instruction. So they have completed the whole process, and we want to know if the program has been successful. So in this case, the purpose is measuring precisely the extent of achievement and efficiency of the program. So we're going to make fewer decisions, but these will be large-scale decisions that could produce radical changes in the program. Now, as far as qualitative and quantitative evaluation are concerned, we can say that quantitative data involves using numerical data such as statistics and percentages, for example, test scores, student rankings, comparison of group means, and so forth. On the other hand, qualitative data are generally obtained from observations that are probably not readily lend themselves to becoming numbers and statistics. Some examples could be diary entries, meetings like classroom observations, or even conversations. Now, concerning the last distinction between descriptive versus reflective evaluation, we can say that these two are related to the process-based evaluation, and descriptive evaluation is simply a process of collecting data that is going to be used subsequently by a decision maker in order to improve the program. So it may focus on methodological issues such as classroom management, the timing, grouping arrangements, feedback, and things like that. Reflective evaluation, on the other hand, is based on inquiry. That means that it is concerned with knowledge building, understanding, and exploration. So this is the ideal approach when we want to investigate the lived or ecological curriculum. That is, we want to investigate how the program is socially enacted by the learning community in place in a particular context. So this is more like qualitative, more exploratory, and more based on like the decisions that are made day by day by the teachers and the students as they negotiate curriculum goals and outcomes. Now, the last thing that we need to say about curriculum evaluation is that it is very important to verify that the evaluation has been conducted in the appropriate way. So we need to analyze first the scope. We need to ask ourselves if the information is complete and relevant. We also need to make sure that the information is going to serve the needs of the audience for which it is intended. We must be concerned about reliability and objectivity of the evaluation. So we need to see if our procedures are replicable, if they're consistent, if they are not biased. And of course, we need to make sure that the samples that we collected, the data that we have gathered, is really representative of the program. We call this representativeness. Timeliness is also important. So we need to make sure that the curriculum evaluation has an appropriate framework. That means that it's going to provide the results at the moment that we're going to need them. And finally, we need to take into account ethical considerations. So we must be sure that we're going to keep confidentiality of the data that the individuals have entrusted us with, and also that we conduct the evaluation with professionalism, which is something that must be a very important part of all of the teaching profession. So this is what we have to say about curriculum evaluation. We have analyzed the purposes, the approaches, the foci, and the procedures. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I will be seeing you next time.